Good morning. I'm Faith. I'm here very honored to introduce Dr. Sue Johnson. I'm going to start by introducing Sue Johnson to folding one of those fitted bed sheets. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I don't think she's ever been introduced like this before. And she probably won't ever be introduced like this again, which may be for the best. So anyways, here goes. How introducing Sue Johnson is like trying to fold a fitted bed sheet. 1, you start out pretty convinced you won't be able to properly fold that fitted sheet, meaning introduce Sue properly. 2nd, you're convinced someone else, through some kind of sorcery, could probably magically fold that sheet into that perfect square. In other words, do a dazzling introduction of the dazzling Sue. Anyway, that all being said, let's talk about some of Sue's accomplishments. And if I was to go through them all, you wouldn't be talking for quite a long time. So Sue is an author, she's a clinical psychologist, researcher, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She is the primary developer of emotionally focused therapy, EFT, not whatever Michael said it was. And EFT has been demonstrated to be effective in, I think it's over 35 years now, peer-reviewed clinical research. Sue has also received a lot of awards. I will mention in particular the Order of Canada. If I'm correct in this, I think our local superhero, Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds, I think he might only have the Order of BC. So, Order of Canada, right here. I also want to mention her book, one of her many books, Hold Me Tight, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love, which I think now has sold over 1 million copies and been translated, I always lose track, I'm gonna say about 30 languages, so around the world. And I also wanna say a couple things that I know about Sue. I won't be rude here.
It's all right, you can be rude, I don't mind.
She loves the tango, I think specifically Argentine tango, and you have not lived, unless you've been to a conference, which I was lucky enough to do once, where Sue danced live an Argentine tango for all of us.
It was a mistake.
No pressure.
It was a mistake, guys.
So I'm not going to say much more. I just want to give a warm welcome to Sue Johnson, who is now going to help us make sense of the fitted sheet that is human emotion and connection. Sue.
Hey. Hi, everybody. I can't really see you because of the lights, but hi, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here with you. I've had a bit of a cold, so please forgive me if during this talk I might stutter and mutter and have to dab my nose, okay? But I'm here. I'm going to say a lot of things in a short time. So if you are interested in what I'm saying and you want to go in more depth, I suggest you read the book that came out last year called The Primer in Emotionally Focused Individual Therapy, which I wrote with my wonderful colleague, Dr. Leanne Campbell. And I looked at it the other day and I was quite shocked. I thought, oh, this is actually jolly good. I think most therapists would get something out of it, whether they wanted to do emotionally focused therapy or not. A lot of whether you are open to EFT, I think, is about how you think about emotion. Whether you think about it as the enemy in mental illness and psychotherapy, or whether you think about it as something that you can befriend and tame and then use to create change. Because from an EFT point of view, emotion is the key organizer of your internal experience and the way you set up engagements with other people. So if you want to create key change that lasts, it seems to me the most intelligent thing to do is to go to the heart of the matter and go for the key organizer of all that, which is emotion. You can think of all mental health problems in terms of emotion dysregulation. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today. It's becoming, I've forgotten, what is it? Becoming and belonging. Belonging leads to becoming. Thank you very much. Yes. I'm going to talk to you today about alliance, which is the necessary ground for any kind of good psychotherapy. And really what I'm trying to talk to you about is bigger than EFT, emotionally focused individual therapy, or EFT in general, which is mostly known as a couples therapy. I'm really talking to you about what I believe is the essential elements of any really powerful, short-term psychotherapy for depression, anxiety, or PTSD. So I'm talking to you, I'm trying to say a lot in a short time, okay? So I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to start off with something a bit strange and a bit risque that came to me one morning while I was sitting in bed drinking my coffee. So I'm going to do it anyway, which is, I'm not sure. But I'm going to start off with a little intro, and then I'm going to talk to you in general about EFT, emotionally focused individual therapy, because, let us be clear, a solid alliance is the basis of all good psychotherapy, no matter what model you are doing. If your client does not feel safe with you, and there may be times in any kind of moments in therapy where that safety, even though you've set it up so carefully, can be broken, and your job is to notice when it's broken and to go into it and heal it. If your client does not feel safe with you, they will not come with you into any intervention. They will not emotionally engage. If they do not emotionally engage, they will not change. And this is all the research from people like Castonguay, who've looked at change across models. People have to be emotionally engaged. For them to give you their prefrontal cortex is not enough. You need their amygdala. And if they are in threat mode or careful mode, they just will not go with you. They will hear your amazing, blinding, incredible insights that you've written down the night before, and they'll go, yeah, it's really interesting, yeah. And if you say to them next session, what did you do with that blinding insight? They'll say, what blinding insight? I don't quite remember. Okay, because something doesn't stick unless your amygdala says, that matters. Right, so I'm going to talk to you about little weird little intro. I'm going to talk to you about telling you that an alliance is necessary but not sufficient. To keep an alliance through therapy, the client has to know that you know where you're going. Otherwise, they will not follow you. Why should they? And therapy just becomes a sort of chat session. So to know where you're going, you have to have a model that you feel in your bones, not just that you think, oh, that's a good idea, okay? And you have to know that model, be familiar with it. If you know where you're going and you have a map, therapy sessions become a safe adventure for the client and for you. We asked all our EFT therapists why they don't talk about burnout. Because they don't, which is kind of weird. And what the message we got back is, oh, well, when we do EFT, it's exhilarating. It's thrilling. At first, it's a bit weird. We don't quite know how to walk around in it. But it's thrilling, so no, we don't burn out. But well, hey, isn't that interesting? Safe adventure for you and the client. That's the goal in every session. And what I want to do in every session is I want the client to take a step toward change in every session. Okay? And I want to learn something about that client in every session. Who taught me EFT? Rogers? Yeah? John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, he gave me a map to people's longings and needs and blocks and told me what health looks like. That's fantastic. But who really gave me the secret to EFT? My clients, my clients, my clients. I can't tell you the number of tapes I've watched over the years of couples dealing with depression, PTSD, and individuals, because we've always done individual therapy, we've just never written about it except for the last few years. EFT, EFT folks dealing with depression, anxiety, and PTSD. So, you know, that's who taught me EFT, and what you do, the essence of a good alliance and the essence of EFT and EFT for couples is attunement. You tune into your client. And for that, you have to put away your judgments. You have to reach the place where you believe that people have a good reason for everything they do. And that your job is to understand the logic and the order behind their emotions and how they regulate their emotions. That's your job. Your job is to believe in people's ability to grow. That's your job as a good therapist, right? Not to give a diagnosis. The lady I'm going to show you on the tape, because after I finish talking about EFT, I'm going to show you a tape, 20 minutes of session 6 with Alison, okay, who has complex PTSD. She has another 5 diagnoses, but we won't go into that because they're all silly. So I'm going to show you a tape, and then I hope we have some moments for questions. The issue with me is I start talking about these things, and as you've probably gathered already, I'm rather passionate about what I do. So my wonderful daughter here is sitting in the front, is going to tell me when I'm supposed to show the tape by leaping up and screaming and saying, "Mum, yo, okay." Right? That's what you're going to do? Okay, jolly good. So I'm going to start in a rather strange way. I'm going to start with what is really a song. Okay? It's called Wood River. I want you to notice the messages in the song, but I want you to notice how I deliver it. Oh, won't you come with me where the Wood River flows? The little Wood River knows that it's going to nowhere, but that doesn't stop its flowing, or the willows growing, or all of the lovers showing their hearts to each other there. 'Cause the heart is bigger than trouble, and the heart is bigger than doubt. But the heart sometimes needs a little help to figure that out. So won't you come with me where the Wood River flows? The little Wood River knows that it's going to nowhere but. Now, why should I start this talk with a little song about a river? Well, I'd like you to notice first, it starts with an invitation. an invitation to join me on a journey. It doesn't start with intellectual information. It starts with, come with me. It starts with a personal invitation to connect with me, Sue. Sue, who is present, engaged, present with you, focused on you. Connection before prescription. Connection. I can't tell you the number of manuals I've read from research protocols where they start off therapy with what they call assessment. If I was the client, I wouldn't have come back after that assessment because it's all done with a protocol. And when the client tries to say something personal, doesn't fit with the protocol, the therapist goes straight past it. Whereas an EFT therapist would have seen that as an opportunity to go in and talk to the client. Talk to the client about, from our point of view, the only thing that matters. How, this is an experiential therapy, how they construct their experience in the moment. How they are constructing their experience, constructing their identity, constructing their engagement with others. That's what you're going to try and change. So you go in and you connect with this person, right? And you say, basically, we're going to do something together. I want to be with you, available to you. Yeah? The message is, I'm safe. And I'm with you. And you'll notice on some of our tapes that Leanne and I do in our trainings, which you can find on our website. You'll notice on some of our tapes that we'll actually, because we're doing so much online now, you know, what I used to do when I was in person is I'd reach out and touch the person on the outside of their knee. Well, you can't do that online. So we're actually saying things like, yes, I can feel your sadness, I can feel it. I feel it myself. Yes, you're right. This is worth weeping for. You make me, I want to weep with you. I can feel how hard this is for you, how hard it is for you to talk about. I'm here, I feel it with you. We actually say those things, okay? The message is, to put it in attachment terms, I'm a safe haven. I'm a person you can risk with, you can explore with, you can explore the edges of your experience. I'll reach for you, I'll come to meet you where you are now. As my last client, who was exceedingly difficult, said to me, you know, you're a therapist. I said, yes, that's why you're here, right? But he said it sort of as an accusation. You know, you're a therapist. I said, yes. So he said, so, you know, you can give up right away with the challenging all my ideas about how I'm disgusting, weak, pathetic, and a traitor, because it's true. I thought, I got you, buddy. Because I'm not going to tell you it's not true. I'm going to tell you it makes perfect sense that you see yourself that way. Of course you do. And when I ask him if he can see the little 11-year-old who decided all these things, he says, no, I can't see him. No, I don't want to see him. I haven't seen his face. No, he's a ghost. Well, in session 8, it was really difficult. In session 8, he says, I say, can you see him? And he closes his eyes and he says, yes. And he starts to access that vulnerable part of himself. Therapy is about going into your vulnerability and being able to walk into it and through it and out the other side. Therapy is not just about coping with your vulnerability with all kinds of skills. Sooner or later, your vulnerability will stand up and eat you because it's more powerful than the skills. So from our point of view, you go in, and part of the alliance is you pace for people. You always take them to the limit of their safety. but you pace the sessions with them, okay? You take care of them. You know where you're going, and you pace it. Like a mother says, why don't you just put your toe in the water, Joey? Let's just put your toe in the mother doesn't say, oh, walk into the water. Right? That doesn't work. So part of alliance is you pace. You see the logic in people's stuck places. So this man doesn't know what to do when I say, of course, you see yourself as a traitor. No one in your family ever saw you, did they? You were unseen and alone. You grew up alone. Attachment theory tells us emotional isolation is iatrogenic for human beings. You are simply not wired for it. You don't deal with it well. Nobody does. You're not wired for it. So aloneness is a huge element in depression, anxiety, and trauma, right? So we say, we see the places you are stuck and caught in your life. You are stuck, not sick. And we see how the way you're twisting away from your pain actually ends up creating that pain. Your protection becomes a prison. That's true in depression, anxiety, and PTSD. Okay, so the message is, I'm safe. You can explore with me. I'm with you. I see you. I don't blame you. I understand where you're stuck. You're stuck because you're a human being. We all get stuck. You're stuck because you're a human being. And I'll walk into that stuck place with you. And gradually, we'll unfold it because, and here we come to the second message, you are bigger than your problems. The heart is bigger than trouble. You are bigger than your problems. You can grow. This is your job to believe in this. Rogers and Bowlby never met, which is really a shame because they would have loved each other. Rogers and Bowlby never met, but they both believed that we had an innate ability to grow when we feel safe. Okay? Belonging leads to becoming when we feel safe. The wonderful thing from my point of view about EFT for couples is not just that I change the relationship patterns, jolly good, that's great. Secure bonding is something we all long for in life. It's because when the couple change their patterns, they grow each other. You see them grow each other. You see them support each other, validate each other, say, I see you, you matter to me. And when people hear that message, they grow. They don't have to be vigilant for threat. They can explore, and they start to feel competent in dealing with their experience. So they start to trust themselves, and they start to trust other people. So the message is, you can grow, you're bigger than your problems. But the real reason why I sung you that little song is, I'm singing to your amygdala. I'm going past your prefrontal cortex. You expected all kinds of information. Well, you're going to get that, I'm afraid. But I'm singing to your amygdala. I'm offering you emotional music. The emotional music that your brain is wired to prioritize, to listen to, about safety and connection. Oh, won't you come with me where the wood river flows? There's nothing scary about a river flowing. Come with me. I know how to get there. Come with me, we'll go together. Yeah? And basically, what we're talking about here is we believe that you have to access emotion, and people want, excuse me while I snivel, people want easy formulas, which is difficult. Therapy is a complex activity. But if you want an easy formula for dealing with emotion, You can't get people to emote when I'm talking like this. I'm talking to your prefrontal cortex. If you want people to go into their emotions, stay there, you have to drop your voice. Go slow and simple. Go as specific as you can. Could you tell me, you're using the word depression, Alison. Alison's the person you're going to see on the tape. Can we talk about that? Depression. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Tell me about the last time you felt depressed. We go into it, and she stays with me, and we go to, what is depression for Alison? It's heartbreak. Ah, that's different than depression. Heartbreak. Ah, there you have all the longing for the little girl who suffered in silence while being abused by her two brothers every night from the time she was 8 to the time she was 16, and nobody in the family noticing. And she suffered in silence to protect the family. She needn't have bothered, because when the family found out, her father said, "Oh, that was just childhood mistakes." So nobody ever saw her. She was alone all this time, suffering in silence, and she's heartbroken. That's different than depression. And you guys all know, because emotion has an action tendency in it, what to do with heartbreak. What to do with heartbreak is you recognize it, you hold the pain, and you weep. Because you're worth weeping for. You weep. And as you weep, the pain gets more familiar and more specific, and you're able to name it and tame it. And as you weep, somehow you're heartbroken, but you're not just heartbroken. You're heartbroken, and you're somebody who's dealing with it with the help of the therapist. And then you start to grow. That has so much possibility in it, rather than, I am depressed, and with Alison it's, I am depressed, and my doctor says I also have OCD, depression, anxiety, and borderline. Borderline always comes in when people think you're going to be difficult and they don't know what to do with you. It seems to me it's the favorite in mental health. She's borderline. Oh! That's a naughty diagnosis, I want you to know. Because all the research says it's complex PTSD. And complex PTSD, we can understand it. And what we can understand, we can treat. So let me see. Believe it or not, that was the intro, and I'm already way behind. See what I mean? I just start to talk, all right? So, emotionally focused individual therapy, EFT. Don't you love the acronym? I couldn't believe it. EFT. Fit for life. Maybe I'm a weird, rather intense person. I am, actually. I'm a rather intense person. You wouldn't believe that, would you, listening to me here? But I'm not interested. I remember in graduate school being taught how to teach people coping skills. I remember thinking, this is boring. Of course it's not always boring. That's all people need, and they do great with that. But I remember thinking, yawn. This is boring. I don't want to do this. And then I remember looking at Rogers and thinking, oh, he's much more interesting. EFT and EFT have been called Rogers on speed. Which is true, because people say to me, my wonderful students at the University of Ottawa used to say things like, well, how many times do you reflect in a session? This is my wonderful student, Jessica, who's now a brilliant EFT therapist in Montreal. I said, Jessica, just do it all the time. And she said, all the time? I said, yes. But what you reflect is not a repetition, as Roger said, it's a revelation. Because as you reflect, you organize, and you go for the emotionally significant things that are happening. You go for the patterns in the affect, and I'm going to talk to you about the EFT Tango in a little bit. You go for the patterns in how people put their experience together. You go for their core affect. In the end, Alison's core affect, she comes in and she says, I'm angry. I'm angry all the time with everyone. Hey, if you really listen, no, she's not. She's sad. Unbelievably, unbelievably, unbelievably sad. And unbelievably alone. And she has a husband now, Nathan, who she says loves her, but she can't let him in. Well, so when she feels depressed, she goes home, shuts her door, and won't talk to him. Right? She doesn't know how to talk to him. She can't quite reach and trust him. So she's still alone. She's still alone, waiting to be hijacked by these flashbacks of being abused, by these. And Alison says, and listen to this because it's a lot of your clients, she says when she comes in, I don't want to feel. I say, okay. She said, I don't want to feel, and I can't live my whole life in this numb state. That's almost every PTSD person I've ever seen. Don't ask me to feel because it scares the living bejesus out of me, but my life's empty and meaningless, and I can't live this way, so I'm stuck. I'm walking along an edge, and both sides are deep abysses. I don't know how to walk on the edge anymore, right? The thing is, if you have a model you believe in a way of seeing, you do know how. You know how to help people talk about their deepest experiences and vulnerabilities in a way that brings them back to balance. And then you know when they've got their balance, which is kind of stage 1 in EFT and AFT for couples, once they have their balance and they can sort of see and accept the patterns they're caught in, and that the patterns are the problem, not them, the dance we do with ourselves and other people that we've learned is the problem. We can do other dances, we're just caught, right? Once they've learned that, they can then go one step further and go into that vulnerability in a new way, access their deepest fears, and behind those fears are their needs and longings. And they can create new, what we call, you can call them corrective emotional experiences if you want. You can call them emotional epiphanies. We're starting to call them identity dramas. Because in this deep emotion, when you access your vulnerability, what always comes up is how you see yourself, who you are. Well, I'm not worth loving anyway. Who could love me? I'm nothing, right? I don't matter to anybody. Why should I matter to anybody? I'm a traitor. Right? Or these self-statements, but they don't come up as like little cognitive self-statements on a, do you believe this about yourself? They come up in a deeply impassioned, lived way. And when there's emotion and it's lived in the room, in the moment with you, you can start to shift it. All right, I should stop talking and get to what I'm trying to say to you. EFT is a humanistic model based on Rogers mostly, but a little bit of Pearl's. Rogers said you go into the present with someone and you look at how they put their experience together in the present. That's what you do. And it's based on John Bowlby, who said people can grow. Aloneness is impossible for people. They can't grow when they don't matter to anybody, when they don't belong. They can't grow when they're overwhelmed with frightening, alien, unacceptable experience. Frightening, alien, unacceptable emotion. So we make the frightening familiar and human and normal. Of course you feel this way. Alien, we say yes. Everyone feels this way. It's just because you're human. Let's look at this again. Oh, when you say depression, you mean your heart is broken. Yes, I understand. You couldn't go to anyone in your family. You couldn't, and you beat yourself up. You say, I should have yelled and screamed. But you were 8 years old when this started to happen, and you were terrified. And you believed that if you went to your family, your whole family would fall apart. So you were alone and terrified and scared. And you are still that way when this depression comes for you. That's worth weeping for, isn't it, Alison? And this lady who's told me I'm not going to feel any feelings weeps. And then she goes home and she weeps with Nathan, which is great, of course. The other place the EFT comes from is all our research. I invite you, if you're interested in this, to go and look at the ICEF site, www.iceeft. When I look at it, I'm gobsmacked. I can't believe it. I don't know who did all this stuff. It certainly wasn't all me. It was my colleagues. The number of studies. We studied everything. We've studied how therapists feel after our trainings. We've studied the process of change. Do our, what we call emotional epiphanies, link to change? Yes, they do. In 9 studies, our emotional epiphanies link to good outcome at the end of therapy and fantastic follow-up 3 years later. 3 years later, for a short-term therapy, at the most, say, 20 sessions. I only did 11 with Alison, and then she quit because of external reasons that had nothing to do with therapy. It's short-term therapy. How can we do this? How can we get this change to last? Because we go to the heart of the matter. We go and we change emotion. And that is the essence of things. And so many psychotherapies have avoided that. They've decided emotion needs to be shifted. I had an enormous public argument with Bessel van der Kolk, which was quite interesting. People still come and talk to me about it. They say, do you remember? I said, oh yeah, I remember. Where I was working with emotion, it was fine. It was a lesbian couple. They were dealing with it beautifully. They were managing it, they were sharing it, they were responding to each other. And he stood up and said, I was collapsing them. I was leading them into undifferentiated state. I was destroying their independence. So then I said something, I guess I could have been more polite. I said, you are supposed to be a master therapist, and you don't even know what you're looking at. Well, that went down like a ton of bricks. And then we went on, and I realized this man writes brilliant books on trauma, and he's scared of emotion. Good Lord. But, if you haven't worked here, and how do you work? It depends on you and what you've learned. I grew up in an English pub, standing on a stool, drying glasses, watching adults emote. Friday night was my favorite because everyone got drunk. I was used to it. I was used to people getting mad, making threats. My father would come round and put his hand, now, Joe, now, let's quieten down. My father made this safety. For me, I felt perfectly safe when he was around. But I watched people flirt. I didn't even know what I was watching. Flirt, fight, just the whole gamut. And I was able to just watch it. And so I knew that there was an emotional music underneath these informational messages. Because the other thing that happened was people would come into the pub and they'd say, the same thing to my father every night. They'd say the same information. And my father would say the same thing back. Yes, Sid, you loved your wife very much. It's so sad she's gone. And Sid would say, yes, Arthur, it's so sad. And then my father would place his great big hand on Sid's hand and say, would you like another scotch? Right? And I watched this as a kid, so it never occurred to me to be afraid of emotion. And it never occurred to me that, of course, under every informational line between two human beings, there's an emotional line. And the emotional line is, am I safe with you? Can you see me? Do I matter to you? Will you hear me? Will you tune into me? No. Okay. I'll stay on the information. Maybe we all have friends like, I have a friend who's very dear to me, but when we get together for coffee, I'm aware of the fact that we stay on the informational level, because that's what she's comfy with. And if I move, she gets very, very, very uptight. So my husband says, how was coffee? And I say, it's okay. It was with Margie, and she's dear and wonderful, but she doesn't want to go to that level. So I know that. So I want you to always be aware. Basic thing we do in EFT is we see underneath. Bowlby said he started out, he wrote the first book on family therapy in 1944. Okay, and he walked around London and saw the adolescents of London, the delinquents that they were putting in jail. And he said, beneath the detachment and cynicism is despair. Beneath the aggression, I'm quoting him wrong, please forgive me. Beneath the aggression is deep, deep sadness and longing. In other words, he said, your job is to go underneath and listen to the emotional messages. They're always there if you are tuned to it. If you're not tuned to it, from my point of view, you miss your clients. So I'm not going to talk to you, I could talk to you forever about attachment theory. It's my passion. It's my passion not because of the elegant research or the elegant conceptualization. It's my passion because it's never let me down in any therapy session. Never. So when I'm stuck, I go back to it. So when Garth comes in, sent by the military psychiatrist who says, nobody can do anything with this guy, so let's see what you can do. I thought, oh, that's a nice referral. Thanks very much. So he comes in, and he's right. He's impossible. All Garth will do, he's got full-blown PTSD. He's been in wars. All he will do is yell at his wife and say that 20 years ago she had an affair on him. And he knows this and yells at her and says, she's betrayed him and she's a whore. She's kind and loving. And she says, Garth, dear, you know this is your PTSD. Garth, dear. And then after about 10 minutes, she gives up and she withdraws. And he says, there you are, you see? You're not listening to me. It's a perfect closed system. But I must admit, I'm listening to him. And after the end of session 2, I went to my great colleague, Alison. I said, Alison, I have a problem. I'm trying to do EFT with this guy, and I can't tune into him because I hate him. And she says, oh, dear. And because she's English like me, she says, let's have tea. So tea's the answer to everything if you're English, okay? So we talk. And on the way home, I get it. What's all this yelling and screaming about? She obviously didn't have an affair with him, with some guy that she went for coffee while she was doing a graduate course while Garth was out of town. If you met this woman, okay, she's been with him all these years, dealt with all his addictions and his PTSD. What's this about? Desperation. What's he doing when he yells? He's saying, I'm all alone in the world. I can't trust anyone. But for a moment, just before all this happened, I started to trust you. I started to trust you. And then my fear told me, you betrayed me. Did you? Prove to me you didn't betray me. Of course, she can't, right? And underneath, where's that? Or what? So I say to him, or what, Garth? And he can't say it. I say, can I try say it for you and you correct me? Or you're alone and you've always been alone and you'll always be alone. And that's when you tell everyone you're going to commit suicide, right? Because that's unbearable. And he weeps. And he stops yelling at his wife. And he starts to change and move, and they make incredible changes in 11 sessions. I didn't phone up the military psychiatrist and say, ha, 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 ha. But I felt like it. And I went to my friend Alison and said, thanks very much for the tea. I don't hate him anymore. And she said, oh, jolly good, that's great, okay. So attachment says, our longing for safe connection with another human being is our primary need, not sex, not aggression. Those are not the main things in people. Young are vulnerable for longer than any other species on this planet. It's wired into us. If we call and someone doesn't come when we're little, we die. And that's wired into your nervous system, okay? It says we need safe haven connection to grow and change and deal with life. And when we have that safe haven connection, when we know someone has our back, we can grow and we deal with things. And I want you to notice, we know the things that create a secure bond. Emotional accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement. ARE, are you there for me? Is the main question in any significant relationship. Are you there for me? If I call and I'm in trouble, will you come? Okay? People don't know how to ask that question. So they do all kinds of other things instead, like get angry and say, you never talk to me. This doesn't work. And the other partner certainly doesn't see it as a bid for attachment, right? They see it as rejection. So they move away. And then the whole thing becomes a negative pattern. So what we know is that secure attachment creates all kinds of health in people. It creates, basically it's associated with every single resilient factor to mental health that we have. What I'm really saying to you is, I think EFT is on target. And that's how we can create these transforming moments. In EFT, what we're trying to create is a secure connection to self so that I feel, how am I doing? I'm all right. A secure connection to self where I trust myself. I trust myself to be able to stay with my experience and order it. A lot of what the therapist does in EFT is evoke emotion in a manageable way the client can tolerate and order it. Make it manageable. Evoke emotion and order it. So we evoke and we contain at the same time. And one of the ways we contain is with the alliance. You know, with online therapy, we've actually found ourselves saying, I'm with you here. This is so hard. I found myself saying to this Inuit man who said, I have no words for emotion. We don't talk about emotion. It's weak and pathetic. With this Inuit man, I said, he starts to feel it's so foreign to him. It's so scary. I say, I'm thousands of miles away, Stephen, but if I was there in the room with you, I'd put my hand on the outside of your arm. and you'd feel the heat of my hand on your arm, and you know that I am with you. I can feel how hard this is for you. This is so hard. Notice that hard is a very minor word. You stay close to the person's experience. You say, this is so devastating for you, and it means this. No, that's too much. This is so hard. And he weeps some more. If you want to work with emotion, you stay slow and low and specific. The good mother says, oh, you're scared of the water. Oh, sweetie, you're scared of the water. Listen to her voice. There's a reason why mothers sing lullabies. You're scared of the water. Should we just put our toe in? Oh, it's cold and wet. Yes, it is. It's cold and wet. Oh, that was hard, wasn't it? But you were so brave, weren't you? Look at what you did. This is what we call good mothering. So, it's not a bad model for psychotherapy, actually, because what you are is a surrogate attachment figure. That's what you are. Okay. So, EFT has stages like everything else, every other therapy. We stabilize, we create an alliance, we monitor that alliance in every session, we keep it going. If you break it, you notice it, and you go in and you heal it. I noticed at the end of the last session, Mary, you usually shake my hand, and I noticed that you didn't. You looked away and you kept your hands behind your back. And I remembered that we spent a long time in that session talking to Steve. And I'm wondering what that was like for you. And she says, I was mad. So yes, I understand. Let's talk about that because it matters to me. I want you to feel safe here. So let's talk about, it was hard for you, yeah? For me to spend all that time talking to Steve, because maybe you got worried that I wasn't seeing you anymore. Yes. Nobody sees me. No, I understand. So you go in and you heal it. You don't go on and say, oh, Mary wasn't feeling good that day. And you go in and you heal it, because if you don't have a safe alliance, secure base, secure haven, safe haven, you don't have any platform to do therapy on. It's gone. And what you get in lots of therapies is compliance. The therapist says, tell me your 3 most dysfunctional thoughts. Oh, all right then. Oh, let me see. What's my most dysfunctional thought? The whole world is messed up and we're a crazy species and we're all going to explode. Something like that. All right, so that's one of them anyway. So, I can do what the therapist says, but that's all. That's compliance, not change. There is a reason why the data on psychotherapy says that most people only go 3 times to therapy. That's terrible. What the hell are we doing? 3 times? That means they check you out and they think this isn't going to help. Tal, my guy who says, I'm a failure, I'm this and that, he says, I've been to tons of therapists, they're all useless. You feel like saying, well, what are you doing here then? But you don't. You say, yes, right? And I'm about to join them. It's like, and Alison says, well, I've been to therapy, but it didn't help much. They just talk about my diagnosis, right, and what I'm doing with my depression, and say, yes, I understand. Right, so there's something about being on target. If you want to survive as a profession, it seems to me that we have to look at what we do, and we have to go for the organizing elements in people's lives, not for the edges, not for just the cognitions they think, or maybe the negative actions they do. We have to look underneath that for their emotional realities and how these emotions drive all these things. And then when we're at home and on the money, we can start to shift them. If you look at the micro interventions that an EFT therapist uses all the time, we'll look like Rogers on speed, okay? We reflect as the person's processing their information, we reflect. We make things explicit, alive, clear, concrete. All the evidence says, this is Barrett Leonard, or is it Leonard Barrett? Whatever. Okay, this is that lady. Her research says people can deal with what's explicit and specific. We dealt with the ozone layer. There was a hole in the ozone layer. We all said, oh dear. We dealt with it. Say to people, what do you think about climate change? They go, oh, let's talk about something else, okay? So if things are specific, we try to stay specific. Don't talk to me about depression in general. Tell me about the last time you felt what you say is depression. What happened to you? What did you feel like? What did you do? I'm going to tie it down. So you order it and make it specific with your reflections. We validate constantly. Of course you get stuck. Of course this is hard. Of course you're caught in this pattern. This pattern saved your life, didn't it? It saved your life, Tao, to say, I'm a bad little boy. Rather than, you couldn't turn to your family and say, I'm all alone here. Do you see me at all? Do you see me? Am I just a repository for all your huge conflicting expectations? I can't deal with this. So he just withdrew into video games until he decided to join the military and prove to his father and his oldest brother that he was what they wanted. And of course, then he failed, which means that he's disgusting, a traitor, etc., right? So you validate their stuck places, you validate their attachment, longings, and fears. Every time they make a shift in the dance, you validate it. People say, well, this will never work, I'm never changing. And you say, are you joking? Look at what you did in this session. Look at what you did in this session. That was amazing what you did. They say, was it? Yes. Look at what you did. That's an incredible change. Oh, well, yeah, okay. I guess it was. Yeah, you can change, you can change. You ask evocative questions about process. What's that like for you? How do you do that? What are you feeling right now? What's happening for you right now? Right, where do you go? Those questions. Don't ask why. An editor told me once, why don't you ask why? It's the only question I ever ask. I didn't say anything. I just said, because it's not relevant to us. I don't want the prefrontal cortex. You heighten people's experience by just staying with it, repeating it, using images, and doing what I'm talking about, which is dropping your voice, going slow and low, so you invite people into their emotions. You have to invite people in. You can't tell people to come in or just name their emotions. That doesn't work. They have to feel them. And then you start to create what we call new identity dramas. And I'm going to talk to you about the EFT Tango. Could I have the slide, please? Is it up? Thank you.
Like, they keep asking for, when are you going to get invitations to the wedding and stuff? And it's like, you're not coming.
That's
like,
the tape, guys. I want the slide. Just the slide. Thank you. Why is it called the tango? Because I was obsessed. Before COVID, I was obsessed with tango, okay? Why am I obsessed with tango? It's nothing like Dancing with the Stars. That's a silliness. And it's boring. Because it looks like it's all about sort of weird sexuality. Tango is about attunement. Tango is about the fact that I could go to any city in the world and stand up with a perfect stranger and listen to the emotional music, which gives us a structure, and start to breathe. If you've really seen real tango dancers, they don't start off with a flourish. They start off standing in front of each other and breathing together. And once they've synchronized their breathing, they start changing weight. You can't even see it, but they can feel it in their bodies. And once that's synchronized, the leader gives a message and the follower answers. And then it's the most beautiful, intricate, improvised dance. It's the most beautiful conversation where you say, I think I'll put my foot there. And the other person says, oh, how fascinating. I'll move it to the right. You go, oh, I didn't expect that. And you step back and move your foot back. And they go, oh. And the better the dancer, the more improvised it is. And it's bliss. Why is it bliss? Because synchrony turns human beings on. Synchronized emotional connection turns human beings on. In good sex, between parents and children, in friendship, this incredible sense of moving together. Why do we sing together? Why do we chant and dance together? It turns us on. It's so powerful. So that's why we called it the tango. It's all about attunement. So this is kind of a macro intervention where we take all the things I'm talking about, the Rogerian, smaller ways of being with people, and we put them into a sequence that creates change, okay? This works with families, couples, and individuals. The first thing we do is we stay with what's happening in the room, and we mirror present process. We stay in the present. So I will say to Alison, so could you help me? You are here because you do something that you called dissociate, yeah? And what you're telling me is you can't feel and you can't be numb all the time. So that's really difficult. I do intrapsychic and interpersonal, both patterns. And when you feel these things, you shut down and you shut everyone out, including Nathan, who you know on some level you can trust. But you shut down so you're all alone. And the main thing that comes up for you in this state at the beginning is anger. Is that right? And she doesn't even know what the trigger for her anger is. She doesn't even know that. I ask her and she says, I don't know. She's very offhand. You're going to see session 6. Session 5 was just pure resistance. No, I don't want to talk about this. Why should we talk about this? Why should we talk about my emotions? No, I'm not going to close my eyes. Why should I close my eye? Okay, this is just hard for you. This is just too hard. I validate how blocked she is. Session 6, she comes in, she opens up. If I'd said, if I'd given her the message, you're just being a resistant client, she wouldn't have done that when, oh, okay, jolly good. All right, I'm late. All right. You didn't yell, Sarah. You reflect present processes. So I say to Alison, so you're caught in anger and in shutting down, trying not to feel, and you're caught shutting people out and being all alone and waiting for these flashbacks and what you call depression to come for you. That's right. That's her problem. You can call it any name you want. There's thousands of names in the DSM. Most of them are completely useless. So, you can call them any name you want. Once we have that she's caught in this process, and it's the process, the dance with herself and others, that is the issue that's keeping these things going. We go into step 2, which is we take the elevator down and we go into the affect. And you'll notice on the slide, and you'll see in the EFT literature, one of the reasons we've stayed away from emotion is we haven't understood it. how important it is, and we haven't understood that it's based of certain elements. It's got a trigger, it's got a perception, a body response, a meaning, which is what people tell themselves, usually about themselves, and an action tendency. It pushes people into an action. So we go through them. And the way I outline them with Alison is I say, so could you help me? When all these negative feelings come up, it starts with your blood boiling. Is that right? And the trigger we found was when anyone makes any demand from her, in her job, on the phone, a friend, anyone. If they make of course, because her brothers used to walk into her room and demand sexual favors and threaten the hell out of her, right? So yeah, she's allergic to demands. So, but first of all, I don't know, this is just me. This is just who I am. No, it's not. So your blood boils. And then, because I work hard to move her here, right now as you talk about this, you feel shaky. She never goes there. She doesn't want to go there. That's the vulnerability. She says, yes. And you can feel that right now, yes. So, and then you go into what you call a fog. Is that right? And the fog probably saved her life. It allowed her to survive in her family. Yes, a fog, right? And then what happens is you feel more and more alone. And what you used to do until a few years ago is beat your head on the wall to try and come out of the fog. Yes, I don't do that anymore. Great, all right? But you can see where self-harm comes in here. If I create the pain, it's more manageable. So, and then before you did that, you'd beat your head or you'd find a way out of the fog somehow. Then what you do is you distract yourself with TV and zoodles. I don't know what zoodles are. Somebody told me they're some sort of literally noodles. I thought they were like Cheerios, whatever, okay. So, and then she eats, and gradually it goes away, and then it happens again. So this is the pattern she's caught in. And we talk about this, and we go into it, and we go into the shaky, and we come up with heartbreak. And we come up with what she's weeping for. She was never seen. She was never protected. And she comes up with an image, which you're going to see me working with on the tape, of her as a little girl hiding under her bed against the wall to try and get away from her brothers who are going to come in and sexually abuse her. Okay? That's the way, that image is the way into her vulnerability. Move 3 in the tango is you take that clearer emotional music and you turn it into an enactment, usually with the most vulnerable piece of self, sometimes not. Sometimes with an internalized attachment figure. We've all got internalized attachment figures. I can still hear my father's voice in my head. It blows my mind. It's still there at times when I'm exhilarated or when I'm really down. When I'm exhilarated, I hear my father say, "Jolly good, squiggle plip," which is what he used to call me. Don't ask me why, I don't know. Jolly good. Right? And my body goes, oh. Right? Because his voice when I was little was absolutely key. I think the reason I married my husband is because his voice and his hands are just like my father's. He doesn't like it when I say that. Okay, so he's an amazing man. Let's get that clear. But so you choreograph this new drama with the resourced adult self being able to talk to the vulnerable, overwhelmed self in a new way. I cannot tell you, if you load the affect, I cannot tell you how powerful this is. In the book, in the primer, there's a session, and I really hesitated whether to put this in, where Henny, my traumatized client, was one of the most traumatized clients I've ever worked with in my life. Henny said, I don't remember I know I watched my sisters being raped by my father, but I don't remember the first time I was raped. And then Henny does remember. And we go through it in therapy. Not all trauma survivors need to do that, to go straight into the trauma. They don't. But she went in. So I went in with her, and she went through the whole thing. I've never seen anyone weep like this. It broke my heart. And, you know, she wept, and her nose ran, and at one point I was concerned. I said, do you need to stop? She said, no. She went through it. So I was very concerned for her. And in the next session I said, you can call me anytime, she didn't call. Next session I said, how are you? Can't believe what you did in the last session. It was the bravest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe you did that. How are you? I've been worried about you. She says, I'm fine. I said, well, how can you be fine? Okay, give me a break. She said, I'm fine, because now I have me, you see. Oh, right. The strong adult part of you went in and comforted and held the little part of you that was lying on the bathroom floor. Ah, right. You found out that you can accept that part, that you can deal with that part, that you understand it, that you can hold it, that you're not there anymore. You understand that that distress is manageable. Okay, got it. So those dramas are very important. They're change events. They're the emotional epiphanies. And we process the encounter. What was that like for you? What happened here? Because sometimes people don't get the significance. Or sometimes people dismiss it. Oh, it was nothing. So then you replay it. It was nothing? Look at what you did. You reached. You reached for the first time in your life. You took this risk. It's amazing. And then you go to move 5, where you integrate and validate. And you point out to people, you can change. You just did it. Look at what you did. That's amazing, isn't it? And if you do this regularly, after 10 or 12 sessions, you can actually see this person relax in their body and start to grow. Okay, so we do go into the emotion on a somatic body level. We go into the emotion of what do you say to yourself in these moments. Alison used to say, why didn't I yell? Why did I suffer in silence? Was there something wrong with me that my brothers chose to bully me? Why was I so scared? Da, 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 da. It's my fault. Most trauma survivors in your office find a way to blame themselves for the trauma, right? And that's iatrogenic. And we validate and integrate. So now I'm going to stop, and I'm going to show you a piece of Alison working with me. For me, this session was significant because it was the first time she opened up. Before, she'd been really quite resistant. I don't want to talk about this. She had lots of business. She had drinks of water. She used to turn around and say, you know, my plant behind me is really flourishing. I'd say, yes. Let's go back to what I just said a moment ago. EFT is about ruthless empathy. For ruthless empathy, you have to remember the last thing they said, and you say, we're going there. Right? And the person will do all kinds of dances and things. You say, yes, what very interesting dances. Mm-hmm. Let's go back there now. Okay, so you go back. This is the first time she's really opened up. Her strengths are that she did somehow go and get a degree. I don't know how she did that. She's left her family behind on the other side of the country. She won't have anything to do with them. When you open the tape, the first thing you see is her saying, my brothers phone me up and say, are you going to get married to Nathan? Are we coming? And I say, You're not coming. Her family still don't get what happened to her, okay? So I think I've said enough. I'm just going to let you watch. So let's watch the tape, please. It's 20 minutes.
They keep asking for when are you going to get invitations to the wedding and stuff. And it's like, you're not coming. Like, I don't.
They don't see none of these people who are supposed to be your safe place and supposed to take care of you. None of them see how massively wounded you've been and still are. None of them saw you. None of them moved to protect you or help you. Some of them actively abused you. None of them saw you, right? You were all alone, silently suffering, staying in your head, and trying to shut all these feelings down, because to feel them would make you feel even worse, yeah? Until Nathan. And somehow you broke all the rules and you found your courage and you reached for him. And that's kind of amazing, isn't it? And you took the risk and you reached for him. That's incredible that you did that, right? Were you able to talk to him about the last session?
Yeah. I felt like a grumpy teenager who didn't want to participate in group activities. And he's like, it's fine. You had a bad day. It'll be fine.
The grumpy teenager. Yeah. You're right. I've met a few of those. Well, it is fine, because you get to be the grumpy teenager here. You get to, as far as I'm concerned, you have the right. You get to say, hey, Sue, I don't know if I can go here. Hey, Sue, this is hard. Hey, Sue, this goes against everything that kept me sort of safe growing up. Being in my head, pretending, shutting down, just suffering silently. We're pushing on that. We're pushing on that. And that's what I know, right? It hurts. It keeps me stuck in all the stuff we talked about, which is shaking, going into a fog, blaming yourself, finally ending up in depression. But it's familiar. Yeah, you know that one. Whereas for you, when you were little, to actually let yourself feel, I don't know, there was no space for that. There was no one. There wasn't anybody to hold those feelings, was there?
No.
Right. So what comes up for you right now as we talk about this? How it's naturally hard, and how you do get to be the grumpy teenager telling Sue, no, I don't want to, no. How does that?
I don't think that's how I sound.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. That's me. That's me being silly. Okay. That's my grumpy teenager. Okay. That's where I go sometimes. No, I'm not going to. Okay. So, but how does it feel as we talk about this?
I don't know. It just kind of brings me back to being that little girl alone in her room.
Yes. 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 And when you look at her, what's the feeling that comes up?
Just sadness, kind of pity. Like, I remember I used to sleep under my bed some nights.
Oh,
And I kind of blocked that out, and then I remembered it last session. I'm just like, how terrified was I to think that under my bed with all my toys would be the safest place to be at night in my own home.
oh, Alison.
Just sad.
Yeah. That's really sad, isn't it? I hear you. I feel sad for that little girl. You feel sad for that little girl. How awful in your home to feel so scared and so alone that the only safe place is to crawl under your bed in the dark with your toys. Right. Right. So when you think of that little girl now, silently suffering, trying not to feel, all by herself, when you think of her now, what comes up is sadness for her. Yeah. It shouldn't be like that, should it, for any little girl? Sadness. And you can feel her terror. Yeah? And there was no one. She didn't have a Nathan then. No, there was no one. Right? Maybe, did she have a favorite toy?
She did. I didn't name that toy. Maybe it was Emily or something like that.
So maybe she went under the bed and she held Emily. But that's worth weeping for, isn't it? And nobody saw her. Nobody saw her pain. And she had to pretend and keep it to herself. But you see it right now. I see it. I'm sure if you talk to Nathan, maybe you've talked to Nathan about this already, he sees it. Right? But back then, no one saw it. And that brings up terror and grief and sadness for her. Yeah, it's worth weeping for her. There was no one to weep for her. Can you feel that terror when we talk about it? Is it like the shakiness we talked about?
I can feel it, but it's not as big as it was then.
Right. And is it like the shakiness or is it something else?
No, just sad. Just
She's telling me
dealt with so
sadness
much
is the core
since
affect
that
here.
terror I felt feels almost like nothing, but it's still sad.
Okay, so what you're telling me, if I'm hearing you right, is Sue, she was terrified, all by herself under the bed, hiding her pain, hiding her fear, suffering silently, trying to, the idea of keeping her family together, keeping her family safe, right? But when you think about it now, the terror isn't so present for you. What is true is the sadness, yeah? Yeah. And can you feel that sadness in your body?
Kind of. It feels like it's a shadow. Like I know how that felt, but I'm still kind of not allowing myself to feel that, or it doesn't feel as bad as it was. But like I know in those moments when I was hiding that I was terrified. That was the scariest thing. And I think now as an adult, I've faced so much more that's terrifying, and it doesn't feel so bad.
Yeah.
But I know.
Well, you're stronger, right? You're not trapped. Remember using the word trapped. You're not trapped, right? You got out. You survived. You're stronger. But that sadness and that feeling of being scared is still somehow part of your reality, right? It's part of that place you go when you get caught in your blood boiling and you shaking and, trying to snap out of it, and the sort of dance that we talked about, right? It's still there, that sadness and that scared feeling, yeah, for that little girl. If you think about that little girl hiding under the bed, I remember I said to you, I think it was 2 sessions ago, but I can't remember. If you think about that little girl hiding under the bed now, as adult Alison, who escaped, who found a way out, who did suffer silently and then got dreadfully wounded when she stopped being silent. That was awful, right? She found that even when she tried to tell her pain, nobody heard her. Her dad didn't hear her. Stepmother certainly didn't hear her. A stepbrother wasn't interested in hearing her. Nobody heard her, right? But now the adult Alison has found Nathan, can walk into his arms and feel the heat of his arms. Right. Now the adult Alison has found her feet. She's out in the world. She's not trapped anymore. And I remember asking you, can that adult you, who has got so much strength, who's been through so much terror, and that adult you turn and look at that little girl, and you said, I don't want to, which I really understand. But this is a bit more specific now. I wonder if you just imagine that little girl, Alison, underneath the bed, maybe holding on to her favorite toy, Emily, underneath the bed, in the dark, hiding, right? Suffering silently. If you think about that little girl now, can you see her? Can you bend down as the adult Alison, look under the bed, the little one hiding there, feeling so scared and so sad? Can you see her? Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I can see her too. If you did that, if you were there as the stronger you, and you bent down and you saw that little girl hiding under the bed, what would you like to say to her?
I'm not sure.
You can see her? You can see her, right? Yeah, you can see her? Maybe you just want to say, I can see you, because nobody did they? Nobody saw you. Maybe you just want to say, hey, little Alison, little silently suffering one, I can see you. Can you imagine?
I think if I was there, I would just crawl under the bed with her.
Yes. 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 Because you'd feel her sadness, wouldn't you? You'd feel her fear, and you'd know how alone she is. Yeah. Yes. I'd want to do that too. You'd crawl under the bed with her so that she wasn't all by herself. Yeah, help me out. What would you do? What would you do? You'd crawl under the bed and
Hold her.
hold her. I want you to just close your eyes for a minute and really see yourself doing that. Can you? You see her. Nobody sees her. She's suffering in silence all the time, pretending. You see her. You see how scared she is, how alone she is. You feel her sadness and her hopelessness, how trapped she feels. Use the word trapped last time. How trapped she feels. You see her, yeah. And you just you go and you crawl under the bed with her and you hold her, yeah? You hold her. Put your arms around her. The stronger Alison, the wiser Alison. Put your arms around her. Right. I want you to really see that. Yeah. Does she let you? Does she let you hold her? Can she let you hold her?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. I want you to really see that. The stronger, wiser you coming in, holding her. And she lets you hold her. Maybe she just relaxes into your arms. Yeah. What's happening for you as we describe this scene? This is what never happened. This is what you never got. This is what you must have longed for. You were starved of this. What happens to you when you think of this? When you feel this?
I'm feeling how starved I was of it.
Yes. You were. You were starved. No one saw you. No one held you. People abused you.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
start.
Right.
I got interrupted by a phone call. What the hell? And then as I remember, my dog walks into the room. So I just let the phone call go, and then I went back to where I was going. The point is, I want you to notice what you saw me doing was deepening, coming out of step 2, which is talking about her emotions, going for the core emotions, staying with it, deepening it, So the new emotional music is right there. And then going in and enacting that new emotional music by getting her to have an image of her most vulnerable self and going in and dealing with that vulnerability the way a secure attachment figure would. So you saw me doing a deepening of move 2 and going into move 3. This is session 6. She has really fought me all the way. No, I don't want to close my eyes, that's stupid. No, I'm not going to feel my emotions. So this is new, and I'm very aware of her window of tolerance. This is enough. So I stop, and I talk about, the rest of the session we talk about Nathan, what it might be like to even think about sharing this with Nathan. She starts off, I couldn't do that, and she moves to, maybe I could start doing it, right? When she starts to be able to do it, of course, her world and her sense of self expands because he responds to her. So that was a piece of EFT. I've said a lot of things in the last little while. So I think I'll stop, and we have about 10 minutes for questions.